The following podcast is brought to you on behalf of the Saracen Supporters Association and is not an official product of Saracens Limited. Content provided voluntarily by our guests and contributors are of their own opinion, which may change over time and should not be taken as fact, particularly as the podcast hosts are regularly talking drivel anyway. If you've got some drivel of your own you'd like to share, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at fezcast_SSA. You can search Facebook for the Fezcast, or you can email fezcast.ssa@outlook.com.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 31. I looked it up, Matt. I know what episode it is. Episode 31 of the Fezcast with me, Matt, and Barry, or, as we're coming to be known, Stadler and Waldorf, and presumably Gonzo in your case, Matt.
Yeah, I don't know. Is it the Three Stooges now, maybe? Is that more like it?
Well, the thing is, Stadler and Waldorf, Barry, we haven't got an awful lot to complain about this week, have we, really?
I'm sure you'll think of something, Jess.
Well, undoubtedly so. But, the first thing to say is at the end of last week, Matt put the kibosh on our big interview this week because we were going to have a big interview. And I'm not going to tell you where it was, but it's kind of fallen through. But we are still working on it. We will get this big interview at some point once time zones have sorted themselves out and everything. I'm just waiting for a message back. So, doing everything over Facebook messages. So I apologise for that. But, plenty of rugby on the weekend to chat about. We'll start off with Women's Six Nations and then we'll have a chat about the Showdown 3. But, Women's Six Nations first up. And the first thing we've got to say, okay, she's not a Saracens player, but we need to pay tribute to Sarah Hunter, who bowed out of rugby on the weekends in a most fitting way. She could have scored a try, I think, perhaps, and someone could have sorted something out there. But, Sarah Hunter, and you talk about great English rugby players and whatever, and we'll say this here and now. It doesn't matter whether it's men's rugby or women's rugby. Sarah Hunter is one of the greatest rugby players we've seen in this country.
Yeah, damn right. I think it's like some of the men's players of 20 odd years ago. Her career has spanned the massive development of women's rugby, and she's developed with it as well, which is definitely something to commend too. And having played rugby up north, which as has been well publicised over recent years, rugby in the north isn't being particularly well funded by the RFU, certainly from women's side, and Sarah Hunter has managed to sort of come out of it as one of England's greatest ever players, men or women. There's not a lot I can say about her. She's fantastic. I'm glad she got the send off that she did, subbed off at exactly the right time, and you can't really argue with it, can you?
No, absolutely not. And she's come out this week, Barry, and talked about coaching and her desire to see a women head coach of the Red Roses sooner rather than later. And I think potentially she's a person who could easily step into that role. Very difficult for former players. I think they do need a little bit of time away, perhaps learning their trade with a little bit less pressure on them. But she's someone who's going to be at the top of English rugby as an administrator, as a coach, in some level, isn't she?
Yeah, it's great that she's not lost to the game completely. And, as you say, her playing career, her England career, in fact, goes back so far that they weren't actually part of the RFU when she started playing for England. So she's seen an awful lot of changes through the years, and hopefully, a little bit of coaching experience at club level maybe, and maybe a chance to step up and work with the England team again in the future. And a great career, and we're just glad she's not lost the game.
Absolutely not, no. But moving on that side of things, England's off to a very solid start against Scotland. The result, I don't think, reflected Scotland's performance. They put an awful lot into that game and perhaps deserved a little bit more. But again, all credit to the England girls for putting in a professional performance with everything that was going on around it, led impeccably by our favourite player and someone who will, when she retires, be equally as lauded as Sarah Hunter, and that being, of course, Marley Packer.
Yeah, my fantasy team captain as well, which you'd be daft not to. Yeah, Marley was fantastic. The England team was all round were fantastic. But yeah, you're right. Scotland. I mean, they're showing the benefit, as have certainly Wales, shown the benefit of players being on professional contracts or part-time contracts as well. You just saw it in the conditioning of the players. They didn't drop off at the end of the game, and actually they probably had their best spell in the last 10 minutes, which is actually where England tend to have really moved away from teams in recent Six Nations. And yeah, the challenge for England now is to sort of show that the reason that they've been ahead isn't just because they're professional. It's also because they're better. And it is a good start for England, certainly. But yeah, no, it's good to see Scotland, Wales, obviously France are already fairly well professional as well. It's good to see that happening, and we're going to start to see results close up. But yeah, it was a very, very solid performance for England, missing some big players as well. It was definitely good. I think Holly Aitchison played very well at 10. I think having a different centre pairing as well was also quite interesting. So yeah, there's plenty to take out of that game.
Yeah, and some good performances again from Saracens players. Some on debut, some established. Poppy Cleal had a big game, and her try was just, I think Katie McLean said it on commentary, you do not want to get in the way of Poppy Cleal when she's on the charge, do you?
No, definitely not. I mean, she's a great player, and you know it is good to see the improvement in the other nations. It's unfortunate for them that there's been historically such a big gap, and it's good to see them closing it. But obviously, as you say, the challenge for England will be to try and maintain that gap and that advantage that they have over the other sides. But yeah, good stuff all round.
And what about the Saracens debutants, Matt? How did you think they went?
Yeah, I mean they didn't see an awful lot of the ball in the short time that some of them were on the pitch actually. But yeah, I think Matt Carson coming in and playing for England, she obviously had that as a goal for the last 3 years, standing down from Canada duty for 3 years and deciding she wanted to play for England and has got just rewards for that. And I think she did pretty solidly. Kelsey Clifford came on and carried the ball well. And Ella Vivas, for the 10 minutes or so that I think she got, yeah, she was pretty solid too. So there's a lot to like about our players coming through, yeah.
And indeed, and we go to the Wales game. Georgia Evans had a normal, pretty omnipresent performance around the field and everything, and did well. And again, a match that was competitive. I think Wales showed that their organisation, which considering the turmoil in Welsh rugby at the moment, which seems to be slightly fixed, but you know they did well there. Ireland have had greater turmoil in the women's game in recent years, and I think that showed. The impressive one was Italy, though. Again, like the men, running France a lot closer than perhaps France would have expected them to.
Yeah, possibly. I think Italy did beat France in the run up to the World Cup actually in a warm-up match. So there was definitely sort of signs there that they've improved, and maybe some of the French players that have recently retired are going to be big misses for them. But yeah, it was good to see a fairly close result there. England have got to watch out. Indeed,
they have. Yeah, very much so. And it looks like a lot of people buying tickets for the France game at the end of the tournament at Twickenham, which is going to be great to see. Well, let's have a break there, and then we'll come back afterwards, and we'll have a chat about the Showdown 3.
You are listening to the Fezcast, which is proudly sponsored by the Saracen Supporters Association, and I'm Alison Davis, one of the SSA committee. For a £10 annual subscription, the SSA provides our members with monthly newsletters, virtual and in-person player events, away match ticket allocations, and we organise pre-match gatherings at away matches. We sponsor men's and women's players, and we support the Saracens Foundation Track Club on behalf of our members. On top of all that, Every year we have a seasonal SSA badge, which is exclusive to members. Where else can you get that much value for a tenner? Join now at membermojo.co.uk/SSA, or come and see us on match day in the Oasis at the Stonex.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back to our next part, and we're going to talk with myself, Matt, and Barry about the Showdown 3. Now, I didn't go. I watched it from the sofa on the telly box on ITV. I will say, first of all, the ITV coverage was pretty good. It got David Flatman, so anything that has David Flatman on it is very good. The Chris Robshaw and Courtney Laws did very well. Courtney Laws in particular, and we'll discuss Courtney Laws when we talk about discipline in a little bit on this one. Nolly Waterman spent most of the time blowing smoke up Harlequin's backsides, which did annoy me slightly. But yeah, no, Miles Harrison was very good as he normally is. So yeah, very good to them. But what we're going to talk about first of all is the experience itself. Now, you guys went, didn't you?
We did.
Right. So I've seen quite a bit of to-in and fro-in. In particular, Rugby Saracens on Twitter, who mentioned when I talked about the fact we were recording this night to say about the experience at the Spurs Stadium. Now, people I've spoken to, my dad mentioned the fact that when I spoke to him about it, that, you know, my dad's not exactly pleading poverty, but I think he's, how much came out a little bit? Was it 2 wines and 2 pints, 28 quid? You know, which isn't a cheap day out. But there's an awful lot of people also saying that the queues were long, the serving staff weren't brilliant. You had to keep it a toilet. You got 55,000 people in a stadium. 2 things here: 55,000 people in a stadium. You're not going to get served like you do down your local. Number one. And number 2, why can't people have enough beers before the game and then sit there and enjoy the game? Why do they? I mean, other than the fact that most blokes like myself have 3 pints and then have to empty it every 20 minutes. You know, I mean, you're there to watch the rugby. You're not there. You know, the beer is a supplementary, isn't it? You know, I saw, Matt, you mentioned you've been down the pub beforehand. So, I mean, have your beers beforehand, get one at half time perhaps, and then have a few afterwards. Is that not sensible?
I mean,
I don't need to put a sensible head on, I know, but there we go.
The first thing we've got to say is that you're in London. Yes, I went for a drink beforehand. I was only down the road from the stadium, but the prices in a pub down the road from the stadium are no different to inside the stadium. I'm sorry, pints don't cost 3 quid anymore. that's the first bit. And do you know what? I am one of the people that everyone hates because, unfortunately, after 35 minutes of the first half, I was about to wet myself and I did have to get in everyone's way going out to the loo. Sorry, everyone. But the whinging about bar queues, I don't get it. Number one, I didn't have a problem. I went and got a drink at half time. Stood in the queue at half time. It took me the whole of half time to get a drink. You get that at the Stonex. You get that at any club. You know, you do have to queue with some hundreds of people to get a drink because that's what everyone's doing. So I didn't have a problem at all. And yeah, I think everyone's been a bit daft there, to be honest.
There's a secret to it. What you need is a hydration pack. So when I run marathons and stuff, I'll have a hydration pack on. I just fill that with beer. Sorted.
Or maybe yourself and all the old boys need a catheter fitted as well. But there we go.
Well, there is that as well. I mean, we'll defer to one of the proper old boys there, Barry. I mean, what were your feelings?
I was well. They now hurt describing me as a proper old boy, but never mind. I was up in the East Stand, and I was in the posh seats, but not in the posh area. If you catch my drift, because it's kind of a bit of a strange experience, that East Stand. But I didn't have any problems at all. Like Matt, we had a few beers before we went to Tottenham. We had another couple of beers on the way up to the ground. I got in 20 minutes, half hour before kickoff. got myself a beer, drank that, and went and sat in my seat. And just before, when we scored the third try, I sort of thought, now's a wise time to head off to the bar and the toilet and everything before everyone else does. But I genuinely didn't have a problem. Now, it may have just been the area that I was sat in. Maybe there was slightly better bar staff. I don't know. I mean, I always cut people like that some slack because they're pretty much on minimum wage, and let's be honest, it's a football stadium. They are not used to 55,000 people trying to get a pint at half time.
No, that's true. And you got to remember that at football games, they're not allowed to take the beer into the stadium or anything like that. So, yeah, it is different. And, yeah, you go places. We said off air, I went to Wembley Stadium for the Taylor Hawkins gig, and I missed the entirety of the Pretenders set because I was queuing up for a hot dog. Those things that happens when you get lots of people in lots of places. And I'm sure, this is only the second time that the Spurs Stadium has hosted this game. I'm sure they'll learn from it. I mean, you go to Twickenham, that's what their core business is. Of course, they could be better at it. That's just the nature of it. And I do say this, I do criticise people for getting up and everything. And I think I said off there, I did go to a Calcutta match once where England beat Scotland by 40 points. But I was that mashed that I was telling everybody how poor England were. But that was Mickey Skinner's fault for getting me drunk beforehand in the Three Kings. So never getting around with Mickey Skinner.
I will say the only thing that I'm offended by, and I still am, is having to drink my pint of Guinness out of something that vaguely resembled a McFlurry cup. It's not right.
Oh, well,
not right at all.
I expect it was extra cold as well, which ruins the taste. Guinness should be put on the radiator to serve it.
I mean, it wasn't left to settle. Put it that way. We complain about the queue at the bar. Obviously, if they'd actually been pouring the Guinness properly, you'd have been queuing even longer. Everyone, so you can't really...
Shall we get on to the match anyway? And let's start with the opposition. Let's start with Quins, because I've seen quite a lot. I enjoy following Harlequins Pod and all them various people on Twitter that are Harlequins fans, because there's nothing better. They showed the video of, we'll talk about it in a bit, the try that the fullback managed not to score. And the lady, the Quins support, giving it large with the applause. And then I sort of said, I'd love to see her face when they chalked it off after he knocked it on. And so it was nice to see that, the Quins side of things. And the Quins guys were very complimentary about the occasion and the experience and everything like that, which is great to see. But yeah, I've written down here three little phrases: bright start, few good moments, ultimately disappointing from Quins. And I think that probably, if you was to speak to a Quins fan and said, how would you think your season went, they'd say bright start, few good moments, ultimately disappointing. So the game was their season in microcosm. A few names to mention. I think Andre Esterhausen, he is a monster. He is a beast. And I've seen Planet Rugby today. I picked out the one moment where he ran across the top of Owen Farrell without mentioning the amount of times that Nick Tompkins stopped him and the amount of times that Nick Tompkins ran across Marcus Smith, who's Nick Tompkins is half the size of Andre Esterhausen, but he is a beast, Andre Esterhausen. And I mean, if you give him ball on the gain line, he's going to go across. It doesn't matter who's in front of him. You could have Etienne Estebev and Maro Itoje either side of him trying to stop him. He will still make yards, and he was cracking there. Alex Dombrandt would make yards as well if only he could catch the bloody ball. I mean, I think he dropped the ball 4 or 5 times in that game under pressure. I was quite poor. Caden Murley, joy scoring tries against Saracens. Got his tries this time out. And Marcus Smith, I mean, I've been quite critical of Marcus Smith. I actually think Marcus Smith had a half-decent game. Not man of the match like some people are saying, but he had a half-decent game at 10, but he impressed me more when he went to 9 when Danny Kerr was off the pitch. And actually, his service from the ruck was quick. It was accurate. His kicking was accurate. And I don't know whether there's, England are looking at 9 as being a bit of a troublesome position at the moment. And I'm not saying Marcus Smith should be a starting 9, but he's the right shape and size for a 9. He's got really good passing delivery. We know that. Is someone going to look at that maybe as a possibility? I don't know. I mean, it's me just speaking out loud. Barry, what do you think?
Well, it's normally so normally when a 9 goes off, it's often 10 that goes in and subs for him during the 10 minutes, and it's generally, you know, they've obviously got the range of passing, they've got the ability to read the game, they've got the kicking skills. What they generally lack is the speed of ball from the ruck, and they don't seem to bend their back and get to it quick enough and get it out there. And you're right, Marcus Smith was an absolute revelation at 9. You're right. Overall, he had a pretty decent game. 1 or 2 moments of headless chicken in the headlights sort of thing. But you know, he did have a good game. He was one of Don Brandt's dropped passes was from Smith's pass, which fortunately for us, was about a yard behind him. Because if he'd thrown that straight, he was straight in under the posts. So perhaps we shouldn't complain too much. But yeah. Decent game, but yeah, he did look very impressive at 9, and I was impressed with him certainly at 9. And I don't know, maybe it's something they're thinking about. I suppose he might need to fight a bit more there if he's going to play 9 long term.
What about you, Matt? I mean, are you thinking I've been on the loony juice, or?
I think that every week, to be fair. But no, I to be honest, I enjoyed Barry's lovely mixed metaphor there of a headless chicken in the headlights. That's really crazy. But it's yeah, I think that game showed that us Quins fans, England Plastic fans, everyone's been too extreme in their Farrell versus Smith views, and certainly billing the game as Farrell versus Smith they were always going to do it, but it was a bit silly. But I think it did just show that logically the right thing for England to be doing at 10 is have Owen Farrell there, and if you're chasing a game with 10-15 minutes to go, chuck Marcus Smith on and tell him to do what he wants, because it will come off occasionally, and that's fair enough to me. But yeah, I thought he had a decent game. There were a couple of things in the highlights reel. There were a couple of moments where he just ran down a blind alley and got lost, but that is kind of what you get. And yeah, I thought, you know, the confidence to step in at 9, box kick a couple of times, whip out a few passes. Yeah, fair play to him. Did quite well. I can't see him being England's 9, but I think, you know, if we make a substitution at 9 and that player then gets injured or sent off or whatever, then yeah, Smith can clearly step in.
Indeed. Before we move on to Saracens, got to mention discipline, got to mention refereeing. I mean, I was very happy to see it was Luke Pearce refereeing. I mean, I will say, I think he made the most of being barreled to the ground by the Queen's second row. And,
no arms tackle, definite red card. Sorry.
Well, yeah. We're going to talk about that, aren't we? Because the discipline from Quins and the decisions, 2 big decisions made, we've got to question it really. Danny Kerr on Ivan Van Zyl, and I don't know whether Danny Kerr's been cited for this, but I think he should have been if he hasn't been. But I think Danny Kerr stayed on the pitch purely because of the ricket Jaco Piper made the week before. Because referees are suddenly a bit wary about making a red card. Now, Courtney Laws in commentary, and I don't know if you watched it back or anything, Courtney Laws turned around and said, Danny Kerr, far worse than what Freddie Stewart did for England. And it was a card of some description that he should have got. And I think Luke Pearce, next opportunity, he got to give Danny Kerr a yellow card. And thanks to Danny Kerr for being that dog that he gave him the opportunity pretty quick. He gave him a yellow card, knowing full well that he probably should have given him at least a yellow for the shoulder charge on Ivan Van Zyl. I mean, he came from a distance and he put his shoulder into him. And I said at the time, that's a red. And I couldn't believe they talked that one down. The second one is Luke Northmore on Owen Farrell. There's 2 things there. One, I like the way that Luke Pearce turned around and said, just show me it in real time and I'll make a decision from it. I didn't like the fact that in real time, I still thought that it was a straight arm. It's the contact perhaps was on the shoulder, on the chest, and then rose up into the head. But what's annoyed me most is the Queen's fans in particular come out and say, oh, Owen Farrell bought that yellow card because he went down like he'd been shot. Well, actually, if you look at what Owen Farrell did, was he was in the air as he's made the kick. Excuse me. And as he's just about to come down, Northmore's come out and stuck an arm out. Now, I don't think Owen Farrell was hurt, and I don't think Owen made out that he was hurt at all. What he was shocked. And that shock took him down, And you know full well from your own times, you're taking a hit like that, perhaps playing rugby or whatever, there's an element of shock. You go down, you know, you see it in football as well. The arm goes out and there's a little, you know, Faz got up on his, you know, sat up pretty quick, had a bit of a break. He's probably slightly winded and got up and got on with the game. The yellow card was probably the right decision, although if he'd given him a red, if you'd seen it in slow and watched it slow-mo, he probably would have given him a red because it was definitely a straight arm. But, you know, Quinn's discipline did let them down, I thought, on the day.
Yeah, it looked like a couple of them were almost trying to get under our skin from the start. I mean, you had Joe Marler running 20 yards to have a go at Alid, or to have a pop at Alid David when he kicked the ball out on the full. And Ernie Herbs was doing plenty of talking as well from what I could see on the telly. The Danny Care incident on another day, another referee does look at that and does come to a different decision. Luke Pearce didn't even look at it. What was interesting is it wasn't shown inside the ground at all on the big screens, and that probably meant that we didn't get the massed oohs and ahs as it's shown several times, and that doesn't sway the referee. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I watched it back on the TV Sunday, and you could hear Luke Pearce saying, in live play, I didn't see a massive incident there. TMO, can you just check it? And the TMO came back and said more or less the same thing. And that was it. They moved on. So I'm not going to have a go at the referee for that. But yeah, it's a little bit odd because, as I say, another day, another referee, and you'll get a totally different outcome.
Well, I think the fact of the matter is that Ivan Van Zyl went off for a head injury assessment. Well, surely if a player's going off for a head injury assessment, that's got to put the element of, should we not have a look at it? And that's what annoyed me there on that one, Matt. I mean, what do you think?
Oh, yeah, I mean, it is difficult for myself and Barry because, yeah, we on the day, we didn't see it. It was never shown on the screen. And I was pretty much the opposite corner of the pitch, so I didn't see it at all. All I saw was even Van Zyl sparked out on the floor. If Luke Pearce has turned around and said to the TMO, can you have a look? And the TMO has gone, I've had a look, I think what you think, then there's not a lot to do about it. It would be different if they'd reviewed it endlessly on the screen and still come to the decision that he did. But at the end of the day, that's what they want to be doing. They want the TMO to have a quick check and then get on with it. It is the directive at the moment. And it is important to note, yes, even Van Zyl went off for a head injury assessment, but particularly in light of the Freddie Stewart incident, like you mentioned, it is important to say that not every head contact and not every head injury necessarily means there's been reckless foul play. But I haven't actually seen the incident live back, so I'm not really going to have much of an opinion on that. The one I am going to have an opinion on is the Luke Northmore one, because everyone's applauding from not viewing it in slow motion. I think that's ridiculous because you look at it in slow motion, it is a clear and conscious movement of him to stick his arm out and lower it down towards Owen Farrell's head. If he'd have kept it out straight and carried on going, it'd have gone straight over the top of Owen Farrell and not hit him at all. He's deliberately done that. That's a red card.
Absolutely. I mean, but then obviously you then have the ongoing one where people are moaning about the fact that Alex Good didn't give away a penalty try for cuddling Joe March in the air and dropping him to the ground. Now, I replied and said, I'm surprised they didn't look at it and sanction it more at the time. But then you have to take into account the precedent before it, that two far worse things had happened than that. And therefore, you know, if they'd gone to that and penalised that more, I think we'd all be shouting our heads off in a big, big way about it.
Well, yeah. I mean, to be honest, I don't actually know whether this is in the remit of a referee, but when that happened and it sort of came up on the screen, I said, well, surely that's just a penalty try. No need to take the kick. That's a penalty try. Probably no need for a card because at the end of the day, nothing's happened. But, yeah, I'm really surprised that there wasn't anything that came of that, or even, as we've seen in other occasions, try given, conversion given, and they get a penalty from halfway as well. We've seen that happen before. So
I was expecting it. But let's have a talk about Saracens anyway, and let's talk about who had good games. And we'll see that the names being put up by the club as to the man of the match. Billy Vunipola, just outstanding. Billy made yards, was creative when he wasn't making yards, and was a willing runner the whole game. Nick Tompkins, again, he's up against a man a lot bigger than him and stopped him pretty much all the time and got good forward ball. And Max Malins, who, for all the tries that were scored, the one champagne moment of the game was him chasing back 50 metres, never giving up, taking down the Quins fullback David and forcing the knock on. That was just outstanding rugby from the moment that Marcus Smith took the quick penalty and then put David through the gap, right up to the point that Max Malins dragged him down and forced a knock on. Quality rugby from start to finish there.
Yeah, definitely. It was great to watch it. That was at the end where I was, and I had the perfect view of him as he lost it going over the line, and sort of. At first, the try was given, and there was a few Quins fans around us celebrating. And I turned to the bloke next to me. I said, "He's dropped that. He's definitely dropped it." We just had to wait for the replay. But yeah, great to see Max chasing back. He also, bearing in mind, we very nearly scored a try from inside our own dead ball area in the first half, which he set up. And if the inside pass had gone to hand again, that would have been one that we'd have been watching on the highlights reels for a long time.
It made David Flatman happy to see that Maku Vunipola throwing the missed pass out to start it from underneath his own posts.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a cracking bit of rugby all round. But Max Malins is coming for a little bit of criticism with the two tries that Caden Murley scored. But I think sometimes you have to look at it and go, well, actually, Caden Murley's one heck of a finisher, and as you said earlier, he seems to enjoy scoring against us. But yeah, sometimes you just have to take your hat off and say he's done exceptionally well to finish those two opportunities.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think Max Malins had a bit of a 50-50 game, to be honest. Had some great moments that you mentioned, but yeah, I think Caden Murley had him on toast for most of the game, so don't know. I want to put Andy Christie out there, to be honest. I thought he had a very, very good game, and you know what it's like, big game, big telly. They give man of the match to the more fashionable player. So I wonder if that was a game at the Stonex, I wonder whether Christie might have got it over Billy Vunipola, because they were both doing the same sort of things in the back row, and it was actually, in a way, it was Ben Earl that was a little bit quieter. But
although Ben Earl made more metres than anybody else and made 17 tackles in the game.
Exactly. Hard yards, no highlights.
Yeah. The other player who hasn't been mentioned, who I think deserves a mention, is Alex Zazowski as well, who had an absolutely outstanding game. And when you look at England's, with the problems they've had at outside centre, why he's not in that conversation, I do not know. I think he had a phenomenally good game again.
Yeah, he's another one that just goes about his business pretty quietly, but is always good. I can't really argue with it, to be honest. And I think he actually had one of his better games of the season this weekend. Certainly one of the more noticeable games of the season this weekend for him. Yeah,
indeed. Quick mention: Ivan Van Zyl. He impresses me every week. There is a drop off if he's off the field, which is a concern still. But the other one we've got to quickly talk about is Owen Farrell, who originally, when you looked at it straight away, you thought that's a bad injury, and we know he's had problems with his ankles in the past. However, he did look like he was sat on the sides joking, just a bit of ice on it. So hopefully it's nothing too serious. Although I can't imagine he's going to be out against Ospreys on the weekend.
No, I'd be surprised if we'd seen him go off. I mean, he was in a lot of pain when he went down, because again, that was the end where I was, and you could see he was in a lot of pain when he went off. And obviously great to see him at the end, just walking around, just with some ice on and a bit of strapping. But with an injury like that, and believe me, I'm no doctor, that's going to be far worse the following day than it is 20 minutes after it's happened, sort of thing.
Well, absolutely. We wish Owen the very best on that one and hope it's not too serious. Obviously, we got Ospreys coming up on the weekends, last 16 of the European competition, which we will discuss fully next week on the Fezcast. But predictions, guys?
Closer than we want it to be, but ultimately a win.
I can't disagree with that.
Yeah, I can't see us running away with it, but I can't see us. I can't really see us losing at home either. Saracens by 10.
That sounds pretty fair, Barry. We'll hold you to that one next week. See if that one comes true. Yeah, we've got a couple of things lined up. As I say, I've got a big interview that hopefully will come off fairly soon. So that might be next week, and we're gonna Joe's trying to work her magic for an interview next week as well. So keep your eyes on the social medias, everybody. But in the meantime, we'll be back next Wednesday, which is something like the 5th of April, isn't it? Something like that. I can't remember now. I'll have a quick look at my calendar. 5th of April. Look at that. That's quite amazing, that is. So, gentlemen, thank you for your time this evening, and glad you enjoyed the showdown. If your wallets are a little bit emptier than perhaps they normally would be this time of the month, but we'll reconvene next week to discuss what happens with the Ospreys and see if Barry's predictions right.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Cheers then, guys. All the best, everybody. Thank you for listening in to the Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.